Greetings and salutations, friends. Character NPC back at the gaming table, continuing on with setup for Game 3 of my playthrough of World War II in historical order with my friend. We started out with the invasion of Czechoslovakia, and then we played a scenario at Khalkhin Gol, which was between the Soviets and the Japanese forces in what was Manchukuo in those days after the Japanese took it over. This time, Poland, Hitler actually declares war for the first time. There are some things that are really unique about this particular Europa game. One is that it's the only one that I'm aware of in which the turns are comprised of 3 days. Typically, a Europa game would have 2 weeks per turn. So you would have, let's say, April 1 and April 2 being the first half of the month, April 1, second half of the month, April 2, and it would be 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks every turn. In this case, it's 3 days. So this entire invasion happens within 1 month's time frame. Victory conditions are quite different, and here is a view of the victory condition chart for both the Polish and the Germans, and you'll see here that basically it's about eliminating units, but there are also some points of, the German government is captured, which is highly unlikely, but it could happen. The German government evacuates, Soviet air eliminated, or various evacuations happening on both sides. Here, for each Polish and French air unit eliminated, all fortresses in Poland are German or Soviet-owned at the end, all cities in Poland are German or Soviet-owned. Going through these in detail will total up what the combined victory points are for each side. Two things that are really important about this for the Poles. One is whether the Polish government is captured, because the Germans are going to waltz into Poland pretty easily, since this is the very beginning of what we all learned to be blitzkrieg, what those mechanized forces can do in the early panzers. They just pretty much waltz through. So it's very likely that the Polish government will either be captured or they will evacuate. And you can see here Polish government is evacuated on turn 1 to 4. They get plus 30, 5 to 7 plus 20, 8 to 10 plus 10. So if the Polish forces can hold out, if the Polish government can hold out and not evacuate and not be captured until turn 8 or 10, that greatly reduces the amount of victory points that the Germans receive. France does not intervene, plus 25. My opponent and I decided I will be playing the Polish forces in this particular game, so this will be a huge impact, and I hope that the French forces intervene early on, because the sooner the French forces engage, the sooner the French offensive happens, which is basically die rolls each turn after particular circumstances happen, and the West Wall is then reduced over time based on the die roll of this chart in certain conditions. There's some pluses and minuses here, but basically the West Wall starts at 270 strength, and when the conditions happen, the die roll is referenced on this chart with the pluses and minuses, and let's say I roll a 5 and the current West Wall strength is 250. If I roll a 5 at 250, it's reduced by 50 points. So it would go from 250 minus 50 would be 200. And then the next turn, you'd roll again and roll again. If it reaches 0, that is a huge boon for the Polish forces. If the French never engage, it's a huge boon for the German forces. So a really interesting part of how the victory is determined in this particular game. And so finally, this chart represents if there are transfers to the Western Front that could happen. Some of this will be optional rules, but this would be a holding box for that. And then the current West Wall strength will be calculated and maintained on this chart. So first, with the order of battle, Excuse the glare from the plastic bags, but this was easiest way for me to kind of show how the order of battle works and then get into details as I set up forces on the map. The German forces are comprised of two army groups. Army Group North, which is comprised of 3rd Army, 4th Army, and Army Group North reserves. These forces will eventually grow and be the ones on the Eastern Front as they attack the Soviets of Barbarossa. Army Group North, of course, will go and siege Leningrad on the border with Finland. We have Army Group South, comprised of the 8th Army, the 10th Army, 4th Army, and Army Group South reserves. This will be the set of forces which grows and then attacks across the southern section in Ukraine and on to Stalingrad, but also Crimea. There's also Luftwaffe forces. The Luftwaffe had what might be considered armies or army groups, Luftflottes, as they were called. We have Luftflotte 1 and Luftflotte 4, which will be involved in the invasion of Poland. The German Luftflotte 1, East Prussia, and Luftflotte 1 Home Defense. Luftflotte 4 is a combination of German and Slovakia, along with the Home Defense forces. And then there's also the 7th Flieger Corps, which is basically like a division of the Luftwaffe, and these are forces. The German player actually has to make a choice here between two options in the order of battle, and those things, that choice will either add or not add victory points to the Polish player. And then there's some reinforcements. The Germans only get reinforcements on turn 3 and turn 6. On the opposite side, we have the Polish order of battle. Their order of battle is broken down mainly into armies. Army Krakow, Pomorze, Lodz, Poznan, Prusy, Modlin, and Karpaty. This Karpaty, I'm starting to realize, is somewhat of a Carpathian mountain region force. So I'm starting to get the relationship between the names and the locations on the map and terrain and things. The Eastern Border Command, of course, being there to guard the border with the Soviet Army. The High Command reserves and units in transit. Then there are these regional groups. This group I cannot pronounce. Wurzia, I want to say. Group Wizkow, Group Nauru, and Group Grodno. I'm probably butchering those names, but that I'll do my best there. That's my best. And then there's some Polish Air Force, small Polish Air Force, and Polish AA, and then the Polish reinforcements. Finally, there's the Soviet forces. These are broken down into fronts. We have the Belarusian front, the 3rd, 4th, 10th, and 11th armies. You can see how small these are at the time. Then there are the forces of the Ukrainian front, which is comprised of the 5th Army, the 6th Army, the 12th Army, and other front forces. But this is how the Russian Soviet army was broken down in those days. it was mainly based on fronts, units that are designated to a front. And then a relatively small Soviet Air Force, but bigger than the Polish Air Force. Before I get started in laying out the units, starting to place them on the map, and playing around with how I want to do my setup for the Polish side, playing around a little bit with the Germans just to see how things might transpire turn over turn, in case you haven't played a Europa game or you don't know much about Europa. You have either a part of the rule set in the back, which would have the order of battle listed. In the early days, it was a separate sheet. It might be colorized with, say, green being the Germans, and you would have their order of battle listed in a few pages that was hole punched and put in a binder. In this case, we have an entire booklet which covers both the Polish campaign, the order of battle for this game, as well as a Europa order of battle, which better defines how different nation states' armies were set up, what they were composed of, so that you could create your own scenarios or eventually use this as part of one combined giant Europa. They were proposing it be called Grand Europa. So we'll be using the Polish campaign order of battle for the Polish, German, and Soviets. First, you would have some detail about initial conditions. This is going to have forts and other types of reinforced zones or maybe airfields and things that are laid out that aren't specific ground units. It'll also talk about repair or some kind of, if there's any details about replacements and rail capacity in this case that needs to be known, that'll be listed here as well. And then we get down into the real meat of things. Here you can see how the Polish army forces, Army Karpaty, place in Poland within 3 hexes of the Slovakian border on or between hex rows 37, and this number always represents the map. So this is saying map 37 between hexes 2532 and 2530 and 37, 3031, 3029. So between hexes 2532 to 2530 and 3031 to 3029, you're going to place all these units 2532 to 2530 and 3031 to 3029. So you can kind of draw a box here like this. This is where that set of units is going to be. So we would take Army Karpaty. We can see here we have a 3-6, and that little asterisk means that it has heavy weapons. It's supported. So we have a 3-6 Mountain Brigade. 3-6 Mountain Brigade, the 2nd. We have a 2-3-6 Mountain Brigade. That is not supported, does not have the asterisk. The 3rd. 2-3-6, the 3rd. There we go. We have the 1-2-4 NG. These are National Guards, I believe. 1-2-4. Right here, Karpaty. The 1-6 Artillery Brigade. The 1 Zmot. 1 Zmot. Sorry, I'm looking at the next one down. It should be this 1-6 Artillery Brigade and the 1-8 Motorized Artillery Regiment. The 6-6 Mountain Division, the 22nd, and the 2-6 Infantry Cadre. So it tells me I need to flip this over because it's cadre. the 38th. These will go around that second 3 hexes around. Wavell is map 37 2929 right here. So it says within 3 hexes of Wavell. So for the moment, I'm going to take these two, I'm going to put them here on Wavell, but I know I can move them within 3 hexes. So I'll probably put that mountain division here, except that it's already a hex that I might use with these other forces. So let's take a look at that. No divisions, but some artillery. 1 unit is supported, this mountain brigade. So I definitely want them in the mountains. And I think having them on that road is probably a good idea. This one is not supported. So I think this is where I'm going to leave it for today, friends. I have a lot more to do, a lot of units to place out. I'll probably put together another video that shows where I ended up placing my units and maybe a little bit of strategy. I'm definitely going to lose, but how badly I lose is really going to be about how well I can keep my victory conditions in mind and how long I can hold out the Polish government in Warsaw, preventing them. They're going to be surrounded. I'm certain that, especially as the Soviets come in, there's no doubt I'm either going to lose the Polish government or they're going to be evacuated, and all hell is going to break loose from that point on. And there's just portions of the victory conditions that are going to make my defeat, better or worse. So anyway, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more.